Hi. There's a topic I've been wanting to talk to you about for a while, and I've given it a great deal of thought. Um, Even so, how to exactly talk about this. Um, I've considered various topics, ways of putting it, um, so it sounds intellectual or refined or whatever. But I keep coming back to the basic topic, which I think is best just said, and that is God is sexy. Now, uh, I've said that to some people who like me, who still like me, I might add. And oftentimes their first reaction is, what? What are you saying? God is sexy. You have to think about, I've thought about what is that part? What are they reacting to? What is the shock value in saying something like that? God is sexy. Well, I don't want to go into all the history of, you know, concepts of deity, desexualized and sexualized concepts of deity. It's a historical kind of thing. You can get into art, and maybe we'll look at some examples of depictions of deity that could be considered sexy for sure. No doubt about it, there have been sexy deities throughout history, human history that we know of, or that I know of, which isn't a lot, but anyway, there's a few that I can think of. And so then why the shock? Uh, I know for some people, the idea that the G word, God, should even be said in the same sentence as the S word, sex, is shocking enough because they've learned either explicitly or implicitly that sex and sexuality, especially gay sexuality, are quote unquote the opposite of spirituality or the opposite of God. Um, well, okay, but is that true? you know, um, and the answer is no, it's not true. There's always been uh, sexuality tied up with spirituality. And again, I'm not going to get into a historical survey of all of that. Um, but I want to focus on one particular story that for me is fundamental and illustrative of these two streams, the one that says uh, God and sexual desire are somehow incompatible. Um, and then the tantric stream, which says, oh, no, 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 they're all very nicely, can be nicely integrated. Um, so the story comes, it occurs, the way I read it anyway, is in a little book, a lovely little book called The Eternal Companion, the life and teachings of Swami Brahmananda. The version I written, and there are at least a couple of versions that I've seen available, was compiled by my guru Swami Prabhavananda, and in this lovely little book, there is a story where one of the direct disciples of Ramakrishna, whose name was Hari, later Swami Turiyananda, but at this point in the story, his name was Hari. Hari, a common Hindu name. Hari went to Ramakrishna troubled because, as a young man, he had sexual desire, which in Bengali is called kama. Kama. Now, kama, for some translators, gets translated as something like lust. Well, lust is a very dangerous sounding word, and the Catholics made a big deal out of lust being one of the 7 deadly sins. But within the Hindu tradition, although kama can, in some circumstances, some contexts, properly be translated as lust, and more often it simply means desire, and very often sexual desire, but desire in general also. The word kama means desire in general. Coincidentally, the word also is the name of a deity, Kama, Kamadeva, the god of love, the sort of equivalent of our Eros in Greek mythology, or Cupid in Roman mythology. So anyway, Hari went to Ramakrishna and said, "Please, sir, take away my kama, take away my lust or my sexual desire." And Ramakrishna was known as a kind of ascetic spiritual teacher, at least he's often presented that way, especially by monks. And, he was also considered by many, myself included, as an incarnation of God. Presumably, he could have actually done that. He could have, said, "Oh, poof, no more kama for you. You are now kama free." But surprise, surprise, that is not what Ramakrishna did. What Ramakrishna said was, why would you want to get rid of it? Rather, you should increase it. He actually said that. Increase it. Again, those. Increase it and turn it toward God. Well, okay, that's a twist. None of this giving it up, none of this leaving it out. No, you have a natural desire. Sexual desire is a natural state. It's something that occurs in all human beings who aren't sick or injured or something, or diseased in some way. Ramakrishna said even he had it, that all embodied beings experience it. Even Brahmagyanis experience it. What to speak of Brahmagyanis? Even he, presumably as an incarnation of God, being higher than Brahmagyani, even he experienced it. So it's natural, it's there in everybody. It's not anything to be ashamed of, certainly. And most importantly, it's not anything to get rid of. It's something to be increased, or at least not decreased, or gotten rid of, and it's to be turned toward God. So, assuming that Ramakrishna knows what he's talking about, and I do, otherwise I wouldn't be talking to you, that you can turn your natural sexual feelings toward God, ergo, God must be, in some sense, worthy of those erotic sexual desires, feelings. Therefore, God must be sexy. And not only must God must be sexy, but it's perfectly good to think of God as sexy. In fact, it's excellent to think of God as sexy, because the more you think of God as sexy, the more naturally, the easier it will be to turn all those wonderful, natural, erotic feelings toward God. And when you're able to do that, let me just tell you, it's like taking a rocket ship to the moon. And I'll just take one little anecdote from my own life before I end, and that is, for years I practiced this asceticism of celibacy and withholding my senses from sense objects, and not looking at things that I thought were sexy and so on and so forth. And then all of that was useful for me at certain stages of my life. And I was meditating like a son of a gun, that's like hours and hours. But somehow it was like I wasn't getting anywhere. 2 decades go by, and I got a lot of nice goodies, but it was like I was in a car with a big powerful motor that I was revving. It's got gas, it's got a motor, it's all operating just great, but I didn't engage the gears. I didn't put it in gear, and so the bar was just sitting there going, and that's how my spiritual life was, going in circles, as it were. But when I learned to engage that gear, the gear being the erotic gear, the gear of God is sexy, oh, boom, suddenly the car moved, and it moved very quickly. That's why I say, please accept. God is sexy. Don't be afraid. God wants you just as you want him or her. And it's perfectly good to think of God as sexy. It's very good to do so.